So if I told you that fear was the strongest emotion in business, then what would you say is the most important emotion? Let me ask you this. When you participate in a video conference or go to meet with a buyer in person, how do you think that buyers perceive you? Meaning, what type of character traits do you project? And if I asked your buyers just how credible or competent they think what you sell is when you're presenting it, what would they say? Well, if you've ever experienced what you thought was actually a champion building, and I mean they seemed committed, but you just couldn't see enough evidence that they were taking action on that commitment, I'm gonna share with you why trust is actually the most important emotion in business. Because if we sellers can't master this fourth elite habit in this series, trust building, then a buyer's lack of trust will often be that silent bullet that brings even a champion to a screeching halt. So I'm going to share with you the 3 high trust habits that you'll need in order to master trust building.
Normal is overrated.
Why would a lack of trust cause a buyer to be hesitant? I mean, would a buyer actually tell us that they're committed and lead us to believe that they're essentially our champion and then fail to take real meaningful action for us? How could someone who's committed to us, who's met that commitment milestone where they're intellectually aligned to the purpose, plan, and promise of what we sell, not want to fully sell for us? Could it be a character issue? Are they dishonest, just playing with us? Well, the answer, a majority of the time in business, is that when we have a champion forming who just won't take the actions we need them to, it's usually because they still have some trust gaps. Just put yourself in their shoes. Could you see yourself mentally committed? I mean, you know that logically a specific solution is the right way to go and you don't really want the others, but still, something in your gut is unsure or cautious. Write this down. Commitment is intellectual, trust is emotional. No matter how we might think that trusting someone or something is a logical choice that we make, the truth is that trust is really just an intuition. And as John McMahon says, our intuition is this place right here between our head and our gut. Even though our head may be full steam ahead, if there's any uneasiness in our gut, then it's not unreasonable that we're just not going to take much action. Hear me now and never forget this. Every deal begins and ends with trust. Even if a buyer is intellectually committed to champion what we sell, if we don't thoughtfully and intentionally fill any trust gaps that they have, they just won't take real action for us. And that's why trust building is something that elite sellers master. So let's get into the first sales habit for gaining that trust mastery. You know, when I grew up, you wouldn't say that I had a lot of confidence, and it was partly because every time I looked into a mirror, I didn't see athlete, intelligent, kind person. I saw chunky. I'm talking Sears and Roebuck Husky jeans. True story. My baseball coach always had to give me his uniform because I couldn't fit into the kids' sizes. And regardless of what my true character was, the identity I associated myself with was big boy. So more than 40 years later, now that I've trimmed up a bit and hit the CrossFit, surely I still don't see that chunky big boy in the mirror. Well, the thing about our character in the mental process of trust building is that it's not necessarily about the truth of who or what's staring into the mirror. Trust actually begins building from what we're projecting from the mirror. In other words, it's not about the image going in, it's about the image projecting out, what we're actually seeing mentally. But truly elite sellers know this. In order to begin building buyer trust, our first trust building sales habit has to be about how we're projecting our character. Let's go back to you. So what was your answer? How do buyers perceive you when they watch and listen to you on a sales call? I'm not asking how trustworthy your character is. I'm asking how are you projecting your character? Because being trusted is not about our perception of our character. It's about how we're projecting our character. Are your statements inconsistent or do you stick with your convictions? Do you speak in fantasy land or do you position legitimate truths? Can you come across a bit arrogant or just confident? When buyers talk, do you make it a habit of listening and addressing what they say, or do you like to gloss over the ugly parts? And this first sales habit of projecting character isn't just about you. What we sell also has its own projection. Does your product tend to have technical issues in the demo, or does it present itself nice and smooth? when you try to prove it in a technical validation event, even though you might have eventually delivered on the requirement, does the buyer experience create some concerns? If you sell a service, those consultants that you're putting in front of the customer, they're your product too. How would you say that they project trust that a buyer needs? And again, the answers to any of these questions aren't about the truth, or at least what we perceive to be the truth. The trustworthiness of who we are and what we sell starts with how the buyer emotionally and subconsciously perceives our trustability. And that all comes directly from how we're projecting our character. Now, the second high trust sales habit is precision credibility. Credibility means believability. The things you say you can do, who you claim to be, when a buyer hears it, would they tend to believe most of those capabilities and claims? You see, we sellers often assume that if a buyer understands us, that they'll just trust us. If we can just get the right words out that we want the buyer to hear, that's all we need to get them believing. This is why the habit is precision credibility, and it's really about two things. One, how credible are the things that we say about what we sell? Meaning, if we were hearing our sales pitch with an untrained ear, how believable would we sound? But two, when we think about our specific buyers, their persona, their situation, how precise are our claims to them? In the words that we use, are they clear or confusing? Are the capabilities we position precisely relatable and relevant to what the buyer just told us was important? While our solution may have been credible to one customer, is there anything about this precise buyer's unique needs that would actually challenge our believability? This high trust habit isn't just about being credible in general, it's about being believable for who we're actually selling to.
Quick pause. Now, if you're getting value, please hit subscribe, tap like, and drop a comment so more people can find this and I can help more people. Now let's get back to it.
And the third high trust sales habit? Well, let me ask you this about what you sell, whether it's a product or a service. Regardless of how credible or high character your buyer typically perceives you to be, how often do they still need to see some proof before they jump with both feet right into the U-pull? See, proving competencies is often one of the steps we sellers just skip altogether. Sometimes we're even told to avoid proving out what we sell. Well, although that may in fact be a logical approach based on the risks involved, we just need to know that since our champions are actually human beings, we humans are naturally hardwired that before we'll be motivated to take action on a decision, we're just going to need to see some proof. The science is called attribution theory. If we can't feel subconsciously, emotionally that we can attribute our future success to some clear cause and effect, then we're just not going to do anything. So that's proof. The habit of proving our trustworthiness is critical because even when a buyer doesn't say it out loud, doesn't put it in the formal decision process, because they're a human, their trust instincts are always going to remain hesitant until they can experience some level of proof. And your path or strategies to giving your champion their necessary proof, well, that's all going to be relevant to both theirs and your situation. And that could range from the simplest things like a customer testimonial, reference call, all the way to a super involved technical pilot. But what's important is that you know that a buyer's emotions are going to need to feel like they got some proof. Now, this habit is called proving competencies. You see, what we're proving matters. Building trust isn't about proving what we think is important or what we believe to be our differentiation. Proving competencies means that we're not only intentional about proving out what we sell, but that intentionality is focused on proving out the competencies that matter to the buyer. I want you to think of it this way. While a capability is our ability to do something, such as we've built a capability into our product, our services team has specific experience and knowledge, a competency, at least from a buyer's perspective, is our ability to deliver those capabilities for our buyer. Meaning, a buyer doesn't just care that we can do something, they need to trust that it will work for them. For years, I sold startup technologies to some of the world's largest companies, and the number one objection I would always get from my buyers was, "We're not like your other customers." And when I'd go back to the sales locker room, all of us sellers would laugh and mock those buyers thinking, yeah, they all say that. But what I eventually learned was that while yes, most of our customers were solving similar problems with our solution, the objection they were making wasn't that we couldn't do what we said we could. They were giving me what their trust standard was. And if I would just listen and respect their trust instincts, they would actually tell me the specific competencies that they were going to need to trust us. So proving competencies is a habit where a seller first recognizes that a human buyer, even someone who's already becoming our champion, is innately going to need some level of proof for what we claim we can do. And the proof that we provide will need to target their personalized competencies relevant to our buyer. Again, remember that this feeling, this emotional need to trust before taking action, it's not always something that a buyer will make clear to us. How many times have you heard a buyer tell you, "This is what you'll need to do to win my business"? Well, if you have, that should have been music to your ears. They were telling you what I call a buyer's trust standard, their personal criteria that needs to be met in order to trust us and what we sell. So knowing that even if we have a committed champion forming, in order to ensure that we get them taking action on our behalf, we're not going to wait to hear those magical words telling us how to earn their trust. We're going to make trust building a routine, something we always intentionally seek to do. And our mastery in trust building will come from 3 specific high trust habits: how we project our character, selling with precision credibility, and routinely proving our competencies. If there's other sales topics you want to hear about, share in the comments below, and I'd like you to answer this question. What's the #1 reason that buyers don't trust salespeople? Friends, if I'm helping you in any way, be sure to bump that like, subscribe, and then click on the screen right now to watch another video helping you to master the human sell and elite level sales strategy. Thanks for watching.